I'm really, really happy to be here with you guys today. It's really exciting. We have a lot of fantastic material for you, all focused on what we're doing with Chrome and what we can do to try to make the web much better, especially on mobile. Let's get right to it. So at I/O earlier this year, we got to announce that we have 300 million Chrome on mobile users. This is fantastic. It actually represents a 10x growth over a year earlier. I mean, Chrome is actually relatively new on mobile. Today, I'm really, really pleased to announce that we have 400 million users of Chrome on mobile. This is fantastic. Just in the last 4 months, we've seen this kind of spectacular growth. I think this is really, really fantastic, not just because I'm working on Chrome and want to see it be successful, but also what it means for the mobile web. I think a lot of times developers struggle with trying to reach users through browsers that are old, not updating, and there's just a lot of disparity across the mobile web and across the mobile ecosystem of the types of browsers that are out there. So as we get Chrome out there more, developers can start to count on a more consistent web platform, a more modern web platform, one that's auto-updating, one that's fast and it's getting improved. And I think this is fantastic for what it means to web developers trying to reach users through browsers. Anyway, so in addition to just trying to reach users through browsers, a lot of web developers are looking at trying to reach users through native apps, obviously, and using web tech in native apps. And for a long time, they've struggled with the fact that the web views are old. And as of LOLLIPOP, I'm really, really pleased to announce that we have support for auto-updating WEBVIEW. This is fantastic. It means that for the first time, this was a long time coming, to be honest. I think it was 2 I/Os ago where we were talking about how badly we wanted to get this done. Getting it to the place where when we update Chrome, we can also update WebView is fantastic. I think you all understand this, but just having a consistent modern platform that you can take advantage of, both when deploying over the web as well as through your native apps, it's huge. I think that a lot of times people take for granted that they have a modern web platform. That's the sort of the mindset people are in when they're focused on desktop, but it hasn't been the case on mobile. And so getting to a place where it is, it's a huge accomplishment. Now, we have been very busy over the past year. This is a set of features that we've been working on that have all landed in the last year, and just a whole lot of different work that's gone in to make Chrome and the web platform better. We've been working with other browser vendors to bring a lot of new features, things that improve the capabilities that you get access to, things that allow you to take advantage of mobile. Stuff like simple things like screen orientation and the ability to lock the orientation of the screen to portrait or landscape. These things go a long way to helping you deliver a great experience through the web. But also features that allow you to have a much better time creating a good user experience, a good performant user experience. Simple things like the will change attribute that lets you inform the engine that, hey, this is the kind of animation I will be making, allows the engine to make a lot of optimizations for you. But that's not it. There's a lot of other things here. Features like web animations that give developers a lot more control over the animation system rather than forcing you to cobble together CSS strings to generate the kind of animations you want. We've also put a lot of work over many years to build up a set of features that powers web components. Things like custom elements, HTML imports, and Shadow DOM. And all of these things are now shipping natively in Chrome, which is just fantastic because it means that as you're using toolkits like Polymer or just other toolkits that leverage web components, you're getting a native implementation of those features. There's too many things to mention here. I'll just say in addition to features, we've been very focused on performance, optimizing the engine, improving performance, reducing CPU load, et cetera. These are things that are just very important for developers who are trying to create a great experience. One feature I really want to call attention to is something that we actually removed from the platform a little under a year ago. It used to be that when a user would tap on the browser, there would be a 300 millisecond delay while the browser was trying to figure out, did the user mean to click on a link or are they trying to zoom, et cetera. Removing this allowed developers to have much more control over animations and be able to provide much smoother experiences. So I think, yes, this one deserves a round of applause. It was actually a heroic effort to get there, but it's fantastic that we can now take for granted that you don't have it. So with all this great work that's happening, it seems like the mobile web is awesome, right? Well, Well, you commonly hear this meme. The stories are rolling out all the time about native apps killing the mobile web. The demise of the mobile web seems imminent. Shouldn't we all just be writing native apps? Well, I think the story is actually a bit more nuanced than that, a bit more interesting if you dig down. And we think it's, there's actually a lot of value to the mobile web if you start to explore it further. There were some studies earlier in the year by Fleury that showed that time spent on mobile is actually heavily biased towards native apps, and very little time spent on sites. But you have to sort of explore this a little bit further to see what's really going on. In fact, the time spent in native apps is dominated by activities like gaming, entertainment, and social. And time spent with other activities, well, it's much smaller. So it's only part of the picture. And indeed, if you look further at the time spent on mobile, actually, of that vast majority of time that was spent in native apps, it's really dominated by just a few native apps. And as a developer trying to reach users, writing a native app doesn't mean that suddenly you're getting a lot more attention. In fact, I'd argue that in many ways, it's easier to get attention if you're deploying through the web. In fact, if you're specifically going after commercial activity and you talk to users and you say, how do they use their mobile devices when they're interested in shopping or e-commerce type activities, users resoundingly talk about how they use the web. And this kind of makes sense. You think about it, how many store apps do you actually install? Well, you might have installed, say, the Amazon app, but actually when you're going shopping, you're doing a lot, you want to do a lot of comparison shopping, you're going to do searches and so on, and be looking for best prices or doing comparison shopping across different sites. And actually, the web is really good at this. And indeed, it's actually really good at helping users find interesting things. And as a developer trying to reach users, and there's just a lot of power here. So what makes the web ideal for success? There's a lot of things, and I want to get into that a little bit further. I think one of the biggest things, this is very obvious, really. It's just that the web, when you put things on the web, there's a lot of tools that help you make your content, your apps, discoverable. There's a lot of great tools. Obviously, search. I work at Google. Search engine is a very powerful tool that can drive traffic to websites. Ads can drive traffic to websites. Social media can drive traffic to websites. A lot of this is powered by URLs and the indexability of content and all of the great tools that are available for SEO and so on. These things enable users to easily find things. But they can also easily share things. And it's not just your application or the entry point to your website, but it's deep linking into your websites. Particular pieces of content or particular states of applications. Developers have an easy time presenting these things as URLs, and users have an easy time sharing them and discovering them. This is actually a very powerful feature of the web platform. It's a fantastic way to deploy stuff and get it in front of users. And the web platform, in addition to having that discoverability and that reach, it's actually very, very comforting to a user if they're given a URL. Clicking on a URL feels like a very safe action. It's not scary to someone. Whereas installing a native app, it's a bit scary. It can be. You're not sure, what are you giving up? You're accepting a battery of permissions and so you can imagine a lot of users feel a little bit unsure about that. But with the URL to a site, it's actually very safe. It feels safe. There's a history of browsers doing a good job protecting users. But all of this really leads up to the big benefit of the web, which I think is that it's a fantastically low-friction way for users to connect with developers, for developers to get user experiences in front of customers. The web is this ephemeral platform. There's no install prompts. It's very easy for folks to find things through search, through ads, through tweets and social media and such, and end up right there on a site, on a page where they can buy something, or where they can complete some transaction, or they can do something that they were interested in doing. So there's a lot of upside if we can get to a place where you can create great experiences on the web, because there's all this fantastic environment that can maximize what you can get out of it. So that's all very exciting. Like I said, there's a lot more that we need to do, because in this day and age, people are very excited about native apps. The web itself has been this platform that hasn't worked great on mobile. We're very, everybody's pretty aware of these problems. There's a variety of problems from, performance problems to, it's hard to take advantage of mobile devices and create great experiences, to frustrated with, buggy browsers and such. So there's a lot of work that has to be done to make the environment better, but we're getting there, and there's a lot that we're doing. So I want to talk about some of those things. But first off, this summit's mostly about Chrome and what Chrome team's doing. Google Search just yesterday rolled out a really exciting feature, which is they are starting to badge websites in the search results that are mobile friendly. This is all something that you can explore further through Webmaster Tools. You can see the validation tool that helps you understand if your site is mobile friendly and so on. But this is all about helping users understand that if they're going to follow a search result, they're going to end up on a site that actually works or should work on their mobile device. That's not going to have Flash. That's not going to be a desktop-oriented site. It's not going to have very small text, et cetera. I think this is a very useful tool for both developers and users, and so I'm really excited about it. On Chrome side, our goal is really about helping developers be more productive, and to do that, we have a long history of, for example, making better developer tools. The DevTools has been a fantastic project. You're going to get to hear a lot more about that later today. We have done a lot of work to help you use DevTools on desktop to explore how your site works on mobile devices, which is very useful. And a lot of work's gone into helping you understand animation performance and so on. And you can learn a lot more about that later today. We've also been doing a lot of work on toolkits and things like web fundamentals to help folks get started and orient themselves and understand how to optimize for mobile. I'm very excited about Polymer as a great reference toolkit for how to build fantastic websites that run well on mobile. You'll hear more about Polymer if you don't already know about it, but it's our expression of what we think a great framework can be. In addition to productivity, we're working a lot to make the engines faster and to help developers create more performant websites. We know that this is the thing that folks struggle with. The engines haven't always been tuned for mobile. They weren't designed for mobile originally. And so we've spent a lot of time just working on core rendering performance. A lot of this is about optimizing existing code paths, but moving workloads to GPUs. So we're rolling out GPU rasterization, which is really fantastic. Allows for web developers to take full advantage of the more capable GPUs that you find on mobile devices and relieve the CPUs of all the burden. And in doing so, reduce power consumption and so on. So there's a lot that can be done there. Ryan's going to talk more about performance, a lot of work going into V8, et cetera. But in addition to just optimizing the engine, we also want to do feature work that allows developers to have a lot more control over the platform. And in doing so, be able to have more control over where the expensive things happen and when they happen. And for example, when it comes to network resource loading, developers often struggle with the fact that the browser sort of feels like it's out of your control. If there's a network error, suddenly the user sees a browser error page. It's not a great experience. With the Service Worker API that we're going to talk a lot more about, you actually, among other things, you actually do get control over the network fetching and network resource loading and caching. It allows for developers to cope better with poor network conditions and so on, but also allows them to guarantee that when your application starts up, it actually loads quickly and reliably fast, assuming you've had a chance to populate your caches, which is great. I'm very excited about that because it really is one of these things that often developers suffer with when they're thinking about deploying over the web and over potentially poor network conditions that people often have to deal with mobile. So anyways, in addition to all of that, we're trying to help developers provide a much more engaging experience on mobile. And here's where we're doing some really, I think, really exciting things, exploring how to, for example, allow you to integrate the web experience deeper into Android and allow it to feel like a more first-class part of the system. A while back, we rolled out support for add to home screen, but we're working on exploring how to elevate add to home screen so that users discover it more readily under the right conditions. I think this is a very important thing. I think a lot of developers are interested in the re-engagement that happens when you have a home screen placement. And this is something that's been difficult to achieve on the web unless users really knew what they were doing and went looking for it. In LOLLIPOP, we rolled out support for exploding and moving the tabs of the browser out into the recents view so that web content rendered through Chrome would actually appear as a peer to native applications. This is huge because it allows a web developer to feel like their experience is not trapped within a browser, but rather it's a first-class experience on Android. And though these screenshots don't really show it, the one on the right emphasizes that you actually get a lot more control over the theming. And in addition to theming, you actually get a lot more control over the iconography. One of our goals with this whole user experience here was to try to put Chrome in the background and let the content take the stage. It's really important that we feel that developers, we feel that users, they think deeply about interacting with sites, not Chrome. It's important for them to understand that they're working with foo.com, not Chrome. And so we've done a lot with the system UI and Chrome's UI to try to help put the content first, help put the web applications first. And so a lot of this work that you see here is an effort towards that. Okay, in addition, there's also a lot of work going on with capabilities. And I already mentioned Service Worker and how it can help solve for offline and solve for poor network connections. That's just a fundamental thing that's been missing from the platform. We've had App Cache, but it's so limited and hard to use. Service Worker is much easier to use. On the back of Service Worker, we can do a lot of fantastic things, though. We can solve, finally, for background processing. We can enable developers to update their caches of content and code in the background so that when the user interacts with the site again, they're getting not just cached content, but they're getting fresh cached content. And you as a developer can have control over that. This is something that's under development. It's not done yet, but we're very excited about enabling background processing on mobile for web content delivered through the browser. Push notifications is something that we can also start to build on top of the Service Worker. And it's something that we are close to launching. And it's very exciting to enable developers to have access to push notifications because it allows for, again, another form of re-engagement. One of the things we're doing is being very thoughtful, though, about how we keep users in control of the experience. I think that's, as I mentioned earlier, around safety and so on. Users want to feel like they're in control of the experience. We also want to figure out how to allow developers to have a lot more power in terms of the experience they can present. And as a browser, as a user agent, we're actually in a very good position to do something innovative there. So today is all about you all connecting with us. We have a bunch of Chrome developers here to talk about the work they're doing. As you saw, this talk was very focused on mobile web, and a lot of the sessions are all jam-packed focused on mobile web. There's so much to talk about, not enough time. There's plenty of other material outside of this context and people here who can help answer those questions. We will have booths and sessions and panels tomorrow. And throughout the day, there's lots of opportunities for you to connect with developers. Really want to hear from you, hear what you care about, because ultimately we want to help make you all successful. So with that, I'm really excited to see and learn what you guys can create on top of the platform that we're building. So thank you so much for joining us today. It's an exciting day. I think there's so much to learn and explore. Thank you.